couple of weeks ago, I got a message that said, hey, there's this guy on YouTube. He's a young guy named Joey, and he's a dentist, and he built your English joiner's bench. And he made a couple videos about it. You should check it out. And I thought, yeah, of course I'm going to check this out. This is going to be fun. But it wasn't fun. It was fun, but it was also the most inspiring woodworking video that I've seen in years. Joey didn't just build my bench, that's fine. He built my bench with basically no mechanical experience. This is a guy who had never sawn a board, never drilled a pilot hole, never held a caulk gun in his hand, and he was getting it done on the cement floor of his garage with basically no tools. It was amazing. And I thought, I need to get this guy on the channel. I need to talk to him. I need to know what's going on here. And we're going to do that. Joey is here, and we're going to talk to him right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I am super excited to welcome Joey the dentist. Hey, Joey, welcome to the channel. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Rex?
I'm really great. I became aware of you because somebody sent me on Instagram. They sent me a link to one of your videos, and it was like, oh, this guy's building this workbench. This is fantastic. And I sat and watched it, and I thought I'd watch a few minutes of it, but instead I was captivated. I couldn't believe how interesting the videos were, and I had to have you on the channel to talk about your experience with this. The way you, so I should announce, you have a brand new YouTube channel. It's called A Dentist Does Home Improvement. Do I have that right?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
And it's a great channel. We will put a link down in the description. I really want everybody who's watching to go subscribe to your channel. It's really a lot of fun to watch somebody get started, but also do a good job. And you make yourself out to be somebody with no craft experience.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, I don't have any tools. All the tools I have is actually my wife's tools, and it was from a small 1-bedroom apartment with like a okay drill and maybe a hammer.
So you had just standard apartment dwellers tools, normal stuff.
Yeah, and the problem is, I was like, I don't know how to do any of this. Let's check the YouTube. And the YouTube was very helpful. There's a lot of good content on there, but I didn't see too many, like, somebody that they don't know what they're doing YouTube. So I was like, I
thought that was my channel.
I'm like, well, I guess this is my opportunity to shine.
So you started with a workbench. You started building the English joiner's bench, which I've got a video on and I've got some plans on. And I think building a workbench makes sense because you need a bench to do pretty much anything. But also, it's a big project. It's a big commitment, and you need a lot of materials. What made the workbench feel possible to you as a very first time ever project?
A lot of other YouTubers and Redditors were like, this is doable for somebody with no experience.
I was really impressed watching your videos with the level of ingenuity. You came up with some fascinating solutions to stuff. Like, you really can't build a workbench without some sort of platform. And when I built mine, I used one of my little low Roman benches. And you didn't even have that. So you actually used cement blocks, like, as your sawhorses. And it was very impressive because you had, I think, 4 or 5 different specific setups that you came up with to hold wood in different ways. I think there was even one time where you set the cinder block up a certain way and then tipped this whole big contraption up 90 degrees. And I'm watching it and I was like, this is unbelievable. I thought I was the king of down and dirty woodworking, but this guy, he's killing me over here. He is crushing it with these cinder block sawhorses. Can you talk about some of the problem solving you went through?
There's not too much. It was when we bought the house, there was nothing in the house, but there was 5 cinder blocks, and I'm like, I guess this is gonna be better than cutting on we have like picnic tables. Like I'm like, I feel like a cinder block is like more stable than a picnic table.
Well, you did seem to have a lot of struggles that were really interesting watching you overcome them. One of the things you seemed to really struggle with was sawing, just learning to use the Ryoba saw. I watched early on, you were holding your arms perfectly steady and then rocking your whole body back and forth, sort of sawing with your lower back. And I was like, ooh, that looks like that hurts.
I think, yeah, that was not comfortable. But after watching, because you have like a specific Ryoba sawing video, and after watching that was very, very helpful. I also like, I still can't really saw straight. I just don't know if it's like, I'm getting better. I'm getting more confident at just like, I'm just gonna cut through this piece because I'm not making like beautiful dovetail joinery anytime soon. So I'm like, I'm just gonna go and like complete this project.
You know, so one thing that really helps with sawing, I have a little scrap of wood here, is you really want to have the line on two sides of the wood. So have one line and then have another. And so you have a right angle, and you can start on the corner and follow both lines at the same time. That keeps your saw perpendicular to your wood. And then another thing that really helps is if you saw, for instance, across the top all the way, you'll create a little channel that the saw really wants to follow as you go through. The saw is always going to follow the path of least resistance. So if you make one part of the wood a little narrower by sawing it a tiny bit first, the saw will almost always follow that channel as you're sawing. So those are two like really simple tips to make sawing a little bit easier for you.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna make your the marker you have. It's like a T-shaped
marking gauge.
Yeah, I'm gonna make your marking gauge.
You're succeeding very well with what you're doing already, but there were some hilarious moments in your video that I really want to talk about, if that's okay. One of them was when you had trouble getting the caulk gun to work. And you looked in and you said, oh, there's a seal in there. I have to puncture that with something, but you couldn't figure out what. And so you went inside and you got a chopstick.
we had nothing else.
And you poked the seal with the chopstick that I guess you eat with. It's like actual utensils in your house.
I might take that to the office to like sterilize so we could reuse it.
It was another moment of ingenuity, but it was just sort of hysterical. And I'll tell you, like 3 or 4 years ago, probably 4 years ago, I was helping a carpenter friend of mine do a job, and we were building stairs for someone, and he handed me a caulk gun and said, hey, put this tube in the caulk gun and go caulk that for me. And I'd only ever really built furniture, and I had to say to him, actually, Dave, I don't know how this thing works.
Yeah.
And that was only probably 4 years ago. I had just never had a reason to use a caulk gun before. And he was really cool about it. He was like, oh, the pointy bit pokes the seal and you twist it. And it was obviously very simple, but I had just never learned. So, you're not alone in that. And I think the point is that you persevered through and you did whatever you had to do.
There was a commenter on my second video. He's like, there's actually a pointy thing in the gun that you can use. And I'm like, thank you so much. I will use that from now on.
I saw you, there was another moment that was really hysterical. And it's the sort of thing that you can't make up. It only happens naturally. You finally got the bench up on its legs. It was all set up. It looked like a workbench for the first time. I was really happy for you sitting there watching it. And then you said,
it's coming together.
And then the bench fell over right after you said that. And this is going to sound weird, but I sort of couldn't believe how lucky you were, because that was one of the most hilarious things I've ever seen on a YouTube. That was gold. It was amazing. I wish stuff like that would happen to me more often.
Thank you so much. because I'm like, okay, next step, start filming, and I'm gonna do the next step, and it's like, well, mess that up, but it's the video is so good. Like I'm not gonna delete this. It's like this is literally what happens. Like I try to do the next step, and then something messes up, and like that's the point of the channel. Is like I didn't mean for it to be like a funny channel, but it was just like I'm gonna start doing this woodworking thing, and it's pretty difficult.
When it doesn't really matter when you get it finished, that's when things are more fun and you can take your time and you can fix mistakes. I saw you had some really interesting struggles with things like drilling holes. So I know you had a bit of a tough time with that. You got out a chart to find out what the right pilot hole for your screws were. Perfectly reasonable. Clearly, you're the internet generation. When you need to know something, I mean, I'm a bit older than you, but when you need to know something, you go to the internet. I thought I would tell you a couple of easy tricks for figuring out drill bits, if that'd be okay with you.
Oh yeah, I want all the advice.
So they're really easy things to know. So I saw you bought a countersink in your video.
It actually doesn't fit into the drills.
Yes, so you bought a machinist's countersink. It's not for the one you bought is not for woodworking. So that's the problem there. You need a woodworking countersink. They have a real narrow stem that fits into the drill really easily. You'll know it when you see it. It's obvious that it fits into the drill, and they're really cheap. And then when you're drilling holes, when you want to join pieces of wood together, so here are two pieces of wood that I might want to join together with a screw, right? So this is really, really simple, but it took me a while to learn this. So there's actually two different holes you need to drill. It's not one hole, it's two holes. So the first hole is actually called the clearance hole. And it's called the clearance hole because your screw drops right through it. Okay.
That's why I'm still like when I was making the potting bench, I'm like, it doesn't feel right.
Yeah. So I'll finish explaining and then we'll talk about what maybe is causing you the problem. So the screw travels freely in this hole and only the head catches. And the head of the screw pulls this piece down. Now, the way to find a clearance hole is really simple. I recommend just buying a big box of cheap drill bits. Like Harbor Freight drill bits are fine for doing this stuff. All you need is to get a drill bit and make sure your screw disappears behind it.
Okay, that's a lot easier than what I was doing.
Super easy. You just want the drill bit to be bigger than the screw, but smaller than the head, and that will give you a clearance hole. So the screw drops all the way through your clearance hole and the head gets caught, and then your bottom piece of wood has the pilot hole. And that's the one that has to be more carefully sized. But you don't need a chart for that one either. This one's also really easy. You just take your drill bits, and what you want to do is find one of them where when you hold it up to the screw, you can see the threads poking out on either side of the drill bit. If you see the threads sticking out, you're good, and that's a good pilot hole.
That's a lot easier than what I was trying to do.
And usually if you buy a big drill bit set with bits in 64ths of an inch, usually you have a couple of different choices. Like this one, and then the one that's a tiny bit smaller than this one. This is the 1/8, which is what you used. And if you went down by a 64th, that one would still work too, especially in softwood. It's not that big a deal. So you can just do it by eye, and that'll make things a lot quicker. You don't need to look it up. But that's, I'm sure, what I would have done too. And I didn't understand, when I first started out, I didn't understand how to drill holes properly either. That was something that I learned down the road. The other thing I wanted to tell you is I saw you had a couple of times where your screws were too long. And using your ingenuity, you just backed those screws back out again and left them out a little bit. Well, something that blew my mind when I first started woodworking is my dad actually taught me that you can cut screws and make them shorter.
Oh, okay.
It's really easy. You can just cut them with a hacksaw. They're just metal, they're steel, so they cut, no big deal. And if you have to, you can use a file to sort of file a tiny bit of a tip back on again. He blew my mind when he told me this because I had no idea. I thought they were just whatever size you bought them. This was like 10 years ago. And I did it a couple of times and I was like, holy crap, Dad, that worked. And he said, yeah, I know it worked. And now I do it all the time. I buy long screws most of the time. And when they're too long, I just cut them, especially if I only need a few. So it's really easy to do that. Once you do it the first time, you'll be like, oh, I can just cut screws whenever I need to. It's fine. So I want to ask you a couple of questions just to wrap up. One of them is, it really seems to me like to be a dentist is a very crafty profession. You have to shape things and mold things and use a lot of different tools. You talked before about the structure of teeth being like the structure of wood, but do you think those skills you have from your profession as a dentist, are they helping you pick up woodworking?
Of course, and that's kind of what I want to mix into, even though like teeth and trees are obviously very different things. But yeah, every day at work, there is always some sort of unique, like this, like if a patient cannot open far enough for us to do the work, then like you kind of have to like think of a way of like, hey, I still need to get in there and like do the work. And yeah, every day there is some sort of unique craftiness, and from the videos that I've made, like I just kind of like sit there and I look at the situation and I'm like, I think this is probably the best solution for this current situation. And not to make dentistry sound like so random and obscure, like we follow, like you want, you know, we have very specific measurements of like 1.5 millimeter clearance, and you want your side clearance to be 0.75, and then you want your bottom to be 0.5. So we do follow like very specific rules, but every day, whether it's a different patient or just a different environment, things can change, and that has really led me into enjoying woodworking. And I feel like those are like, I don't know how to describe it. It's discovery, it's figuring out a new thing that has always like resonated with me as an individual, and that's stuff that I really like.
Yeah, well, you're obviously picking it up and you're using some of the ingenuity that you've gotten from your profession. It's obviously transferring over. What made you want to capture this journey in a YouTube channel, especially since you're very humble about saying, oh, I've really never done this before? What made you think, you know, I've never done this before, so I should film it and put it on the internet?
I've always wanted to do YouTube. I've been watching since I was in high school. I graduated high school in 2004.
Oh God, I'm so old.
and back then, I have started YouTube before. I did like a vlog, like when I was in college and in dental school, I kind of did like a vlog style, and that didn't like. I like going to work. I enjoy my job. I like going to work, but it didn't really like it didn't stick very well. Like now, I'd like, so this week was potting bench week, and my build days are Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And I don't know, like I couldn't like sleep on Saturday and Tuesday, and even last night I was like, it's like 3 a.m. and I'm like, I'm too excited. I want to do the work. I'm like, I'm not even doing work today. I'm just talking to Rex today. But I was like I can't sleep at night. I just want to wake up and like go to the garage and like cut wood. Like Again,
If I wake up in the middle of the night, I actually have to be really careful not to think about what I'm working on, because once the gears start spinning, they don't stop, and I can't go back to sleep again. I still have that problem. When I was designing my version of the English bench, I realized that I had found a design that was very simple to make, and I thought it was going to catch on and people were really going to like it. And it was when my channel was much smaller and I was much less well known, and I was so excited about it. And I remember one day my wife saying to me, you don't look yourself today. You look a little sick. And I said, oh no, I didn't sleep well last night. I was up thinking about a workbench that I'm going to build. And she just looked at me with sort of a combination of pity and also confusion. And she's very supportive, and she always has been, but she was really like, you were too excited about a workbench to sleep? And I was like, you'd have to be in the craft to understand. It is very exciting for some reason. And I still get that sleeplessness. What are you hoping from your YouTube channel? Where do you hope it's going to go?
I just want it to feel like after looking into it, there are actually YouTubers like myself where they're like making very beginner content. But that's kind of I'm like, this is something that's kind of keeping me up for some reason. Like, I don't know why I can't sleep. Like, I just want to go and work on the garage and film it and put it on YouTube.
Do you mind if I ask, how old are you?
I'm 35.
So what's interesting is when I turned 30, I came from a very mechanical background, but I didn't do really anything like this. I was an English teacher before, and I was a musician. That was my hobby. And for some reason, when I turned 30, like a switch flipped in my head, and I really wanted to build things. And I remember very clearly starting out in the corner of my garage with like a plastic shelf with some tools and a super basic little workbench. And that was 10 years ago. And now I do this for a living. So it's something sort of worth getting excited about, because you can never tell where it's going to go. I hadn't the slightest thought that I was going to quit being an English teacher and then begin to build custom furniture and work for other people in wood shops, and then ultimately start a YouTube channel and have that be my career. That would have been like moving to Mars. It wasn't even in my brain, but it happened. That was 11 years ago, and here we are. So it is very interesting how suddenly, sort of in the middle of your life, you can get this passion to make things and a passion to do things with your hands. It happened to me in graduate school, and I think there's something about being in graduate school or being out of graduate school and having a very intellectual profession that makes some people have very, very itchy hands and makes them want to go do something more tactile.
I think it happened to me later, and that's why I really love dentistry, because I'm like making stuff. And I think the YouTube is like, I make stuff and I'm like, that's a beautiful crown, and then like, here's a crown, Rex, beautiful. I'm like, this is great. So I think it delayed me doing it for myself. And I think that's what the YouTube is doing, is because like, I'm like making a thing for me. Whereas when I go to work, it's like I make things for other people, and that makes me really happy, and I enjoy going to work. But I think the sleepless nights are like I just want to make that thing. Like, I just want to make my wife the potting bench. Like, I just want to see that thing in our backyard. And that's ultimately what kicked off this entire thing, is because we bought the house, and I'm like, there's at least like I can make like 1,000 YouTube videos. Like, we're having plumbing problems, and I'm like, I'm gonna do the plumbing, and she's like, no, you need like a license for that. And I'm like, okay. Like, I'm not gonna do the plumbing. I'm like, I'm gonna do the electrical, and she's like, No, you need a license for that too.
Well, Joey, honestly, I find your videos to be really captivating. I've watched more hours of YouTube than I could ever count, and I get bored very easily. I often don't finish videos. I was glued to my phone watching yours, and I think a lot of people who are starting out would really enjoy watching your videos, would enjoy watching you problem solve. I think they would really commiserate with all the different obstacles you have and all the head scratching moments which everybody has. And it's a weird side effect of doing this is now I've been doing woodwork seriously for over a decade, and I'm just not a beginner anymore. And I have too much experience to necessarily capture that beginner's mindset. You can only do that when you are a beginner. And I think that's why your channel is valuable and interesting. And I hope more people subscribe and check you out, because there's really no way to ever know where it's going to go. So, you know, I wish you the best of luck with your channel. I hope you have a great time with it. Focus on the fun. Focus on keeping it fun. I turned mine into a job, and I would never go back in a million years, but it's definitely less fun now that it's my living. So focus on the fun part, and I think you'll have all the success you could want. So I really want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
And I'll say goodbye. Have a great day.
So that was pretty inspiring, right? I think the thing about Joey is that he gets out in the shop and he gets it done no matter what. I mean, he's got advantages. He's got a garage, and not everybody has that. But think about all the obstacles he overcomes. He's got no experience, lousy tools, not a ton of confidence, and he never lets that stop him. He gets out in the shop and he gets through the project no matter what. I think that's an example that all of us can follow. And Joey has got a great new channel. It's called A Dentist Does Home Improvement. He's got a bunch of videos. They're really fun to watch. Go subscribe to Joey and watch his videos. We need to support these new content creators so their channels can flourish and they can keep making content. And, you know, you might need a workbench too, and you might be interested in building the English joiner's bench. If you'd like to do that, I've got a whole series of videos covering every detail about building the bench and a great set of plans. It covers not just the bench, but also a big leg vise and a bunch of work holding options. It's a really complete bundle of plans to take you through the whole thing. We recently redid these plans in Fusion 360 to make them as clear and easy to understand as possible. We always make our plans really affordable. Now, you might like the English joiner's bench, but you might be saying, oh, I need something portable. I need something I can break down. No problem. We just came out with our Quick Stack workbench. It's based on a European cabinet maker's bench, but it comes apart into 6 manageable pieces and goes together in a matter of minutes. You can take it anywhere. Of course, we've got a complete set of plans and a video on that, but we also have an online course. It's nearly 2 hours long. It covers every aspect of the build, and when you buy the course, the plans are included. I will link to all of that stuff down in the description so you can build a workbench and get going on your own projects. I'm really glad everybody joined me for my chat with Joey the Dentist. I'm so excited to have met him. I had a ton of fun. I hope you did too. See you next time.